Good evening, my dears. Welcome. I'm Lady Creepypasta. This week I have a tale which is a listener submission. If you too would like to submit a tale for consideration to be performed by yours truly on this channel, pop it along to lady.mccreepypasta@gmail.com. I cannot guarantee that it will be performed or that I can get back to you personally, but I do promise to read every story submitted. Today's tale is by author Michael Whelen, and it's a strange, mind-tripping tale indeed. So come now, my dears, lean in closer, and we'll begin. There was a tunnel built by no human hands, located outside the boundaries of space and time, existing both in and out of tangible reality, enduring even beyond deep time. It wasn't made of stone, brick, or wood, but corrugated rotting flesh and bones. It would pulsate like the very innards of a beast. Against any natural law that might have been left, there was a dim, sickening glow coming from nowhere, preventing the living cave from diving into pitch-black darkness. The air was warm and saturated, impregnated with the overpowering stench of festering wounds. Its length was endless, stretching all the way through the fabric of reality and even beyond. The ceiling, if any, spanned farther than the reach of any being's spectrum of sight. From the floor to miles and miles upwards, galleries of spinal cords, ribs, femurs, veins, and muscle, arranged in disarray, could be poorly discerned. But I could see omnipresent eyes on everywhere and nowhere. Lost within this landscape of utter gore, there was a light-haired girl, no older than 10. She had been there for months now. I could see within her mind, and though her eyes, to her, it felt like years. She had begun to forget how old she was, where she had come from. Even her name was fading from her memory. She felt it had been decades, but how could anyone survive for so long without nourishment or respite of any sort? There was no food, no water anywhere to be found, no rest, and yet the girl felt the grip and possession of ravaging hunger. She became so hungry that only her survival instincts drove her. She tried to bite off a morsel from the walls. She tried to take a piece from the floor. She was so desperate with hunger that she would take a shred from the ceiling if she could reach it. Despite feeling and smelling like flesh, the girl couldn't grasp that the walls and floor were tough and dense, an impenetrable conglomerate of gore. Her teeth were shattered, fingernails ripped and torn from her during the struggle to obtain nourishment from the carnage. As the girl grappled with hunger for the meat in the walls, the snakes came, rapacious for the girl's flesh. They were such strange creatures, feral, jade-like beings, boneless monstrosities who were eyeless, perpetually seeking to satiate their voracity, moving in ways that defied the poorly established laws of physics within the living tunnel. Paradoxically frantic and yet restrained, as if on a leash or attached to something else, to someone else. The snakes had mouths stretching infinitely, displaying sickening curling tongues and hundreds of thousands of razor-sharp needle-like fangs. The jade snakes wouldn't think or hesitate, just attack, instinctually striking with viciousness only paralleled by malevolence. compelled by a gluttonous urge that apparently no prey would satisfy. Not a child, nor even an adult swallowed whole, would cease their pursuit for pablum. I too ran from them long ago. I remembered. I ran from them many times, for many years, even centuries. I ran. It had been thousands of years, or at least that is what it felt like. Regardless how much time had passed, I could still feel those fangs piercing through my flesh, lodging into my bones, violating and corrupting the marrow. Curling tongues, furiously flickering and wrapping around me, maiming me, mangling me, and yet not a single drop of blood would be spilled. I found myself missing the pain. I even yearned for the despair. Loneliness was the only feeling I had now. The jade serpents had a repugnant odor, a smell so putrid and intense it would permeate even beyond the tunnel of festering guts. It was as if they alone were the emissary of rot. Their fetor could be perceived long before their unnerving hisses reached the ears. The sonorous reverberating of the glottis rattle could be heard even through the rift. The blind boy could sense it. He could hear the hisses, the frantic darting movement of them, almost like a dance. It gave me hope. If their stench and maddening sounds could make out of this place, perhaps I could too. They charged at the paltry child, so innumerable that the snakes would have to fight over a piece of bone or a chunk of the girl's flesh. She ran forward, and with each step taken to save her life, with each beat of her desperate heart, memories would become less cloudy, and the girl recalled her name. It was Mia. Mia sobbed for her mother, eyes filled with tears. She had a mother, and now she remembered very well. I wanted to embrace her, to take care of her, to keep the tender flesh of her tiny and frail body safe from the horrendous jade beasts. Did I want to be her father? Her mother? When I arrived here, I was her age. I remembered that. Yet, I couldn't even remember if I was a boy or a girl. I wanted to be her protector. I wanted to prevent little Mia from having the same fate I had. I couldn't remember if I ever had a father or mother. The tunnel had feasted on my memories the same way its snakes would feed on flesh and bones. Clean cuts, wounds, and torn sinew turning instantly into scar tissue. Memories clouded and obscured, covered in thickness of fog, lost permanently to oblivion. I went close to Mia, but she cried out even louder and decided to once again run in the only possible direction, forward. Her little arms flailing in anguish as she choked on tears. She didn't make it far. She stumbled and fell. I came close and caressed her tiny face covered in sweat and stained with tears. I stroked her soft hair. Neither of us could feel the touch. I felt pain in my heart. Anything was better than emptiness. Mia stood up and ran again. She kept running, with everything she had pushing her legs way beyond its limits. Ultimately, she fell on the ground. She got up, ran again, fell again. This time she could hear the hisses. The malodor from the snakes was so strong that Mia almost threw up. She covered her mouth as the snakes attacked, 1,000 of them at the same time. Her screams so loud and desperate, it felt like they could reverberate through many realities. It felt like her screams could create rifts of their own. Her tears so profuse and desperate, Mia created a rift within me. She fainted and another week passed. Or maybe it was 1,000 years. Perhaps a month. It didn't matter. It must have been a nightmare. A shared phantasm. I couldn't remember any gods, but I tried to pray. I prayed for this whole nightmare not to be real. In some way, my prayers seemed to have been answered. I could slip through the rift. I had become lost within her memories. Perhaps I was wandering along the dark corridors of fragmented, unrequited dreams. It wouldn't be the first time overeating had this effect over Mia. After all, her mother allowed 3 times the amount of hot cocoa and gingerbread she usually had on a Sunday, but now she was allowed it before going to bed. "Is it some sort of celebration?" Mia asked with bright eyes. "No, Mia, it's just a way to show you how much Daddy and I love you," was the reply. Mia would not smell blood, nor the rot or festering flesh, but instead the sweet scent of steamy hot cocoa and warm gingerbread. She was home, and I was with her. "Don't fill up our princess with candies. I'm fixing some steaks for dinner." The voice was unmistakable, even though I had never heard it before. The accent was familiar. It was Mia's father. "And since when we are able to afford steaks, Mr. Chef?" Mia's mother sounded joyful. "Since I got a promotion to the lower levels, and, as funny as it may sound, a raise." "Oh, in this case, our Christmas wish list will be longer." "Hey, Mom, Dad, stop arguing." They weren't arguing. Even for a little girl, it was obvious that her parents were having a good time. After so many bad things that had happened to the family, now it felt like luck was finally on their side. I could see each and every hardship they endured. I could feel it. "So, what will my little lady wish for on Christmas?" Mia's father was now embracing her. "A Christmas tree," was the reply without hesitation or a second thought. This brought a sad smile to her father's face and tears to his eyes. He remembered the previous year when he wasn't able to afford any gifts, not even a small Christmas tree. Knowing how much his daughter loved Christmas trees, he got one from a pawn shop. It was entirely bright pink. "Straight from a famous brothel in Maine," said the owner. It cost him $2 and some cruel jokes that would accompany him on the way back home. "Whatever you want, my little princess," said the father, embracing Mia again. "Whatever you want." His heartbeats were audible now, even to me. She closed her eyes, feeling safe, safer than she had ever felt before. But when Mia opened them again, gone was her father, her mother, and their room. Nothing was left but the stench of putrefied wounds. The snakes attacked her. In each encounter with the snakes, Mia would become mauled and wounded more savagely. She now walked with a limp, and still yet no blood spilt, not a solitary droplet. It was as if she was born missing entire limbs, without internal organs and collapsed gaps where her flesh and bones should be. The serpent's venom was more like a sliver sealing the ruptured thew left behind in material translucent and thinner than skin. Mia felt dizzy and feverish as the jade snakes once again drew near. Unlike the countless times before, they weren't rushing. They didn't have to. Mia wanted to run, but her right leg felt numb and went limp. There was no hope of escape. Not even if there was a rift right in front of her. Mia then thought the snakes might have known her leg had become useless. Perhaps the unearthly creatures were savoring their victory as their prey was growing weak and finally lying motionless. I rushed towards the snakes. Since when had I, myself, means to fend them off? It didn't matter. I would protect her at all cost. Mia was my daughter now. Mia cried out in pain. Or was it despair? I did also, but only for a moment. Now, beyond time and space, there was an abeyance in oblivion. A thought gripped me. Had I finally made it out of the tunnel? Perhaps I could have taken Mia with me. Were we free? Thank you for joining me this evening, my dears. A big thank you to all my dark family on Patreon, and welcome to the new family members. If you too would like to become a part of my dark family and support this channel for as little as $1 a month, go to patreon.com/LadyMcCreepster. Every little bit does help me put these episodes together. That is all I have for you this evening, my dears. Till next time, sweet dreams.